Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. It's a nice cold December night. Little one is hanging out with her big sister, taking a nap together, which is quite adorable. So I wanted to talk to you today about Prince Harry and Meghan's Netflix series. I'm a nursing mom, so I do a lot of sitting, and obviously I watched the entire Daniel Hakikachu and Muhammad Hijab stuff and consumed a lot of content since I'm sitting so much and don't really get to go out and do much. So I came across people talking about Prince Harry and Meghan, and as I said in the first video, we don't really care much about the royals, but the amount of attacks they got prompted me to think, is this true, is this not? Let's give this couple a fair shake. So in one of the episodes, they talk about the history of slavery with the British, which I expected, which was kind of woke, and the race component, which was woke, but at the same time I understand how she must have felt. And it is interesting having a ginger and a biracial woman together. It's a very unique couple. But what other thing I thought was quite interesting is apparently Harry, when he was younger, he went to party in a Nazi outfit. And there's a comedic side to that, I think, because I think he was just being a typical youth, having fun and wanting to be edgy. I mean, when you think about it, what we Americans used to dress up in Halloween was worse than Nazis, right? I once dressed up as there's a horror movie called Scream. It's like a black and white mask, and I chased my sister around the house. I mean, we literally dressed up like murderers. Tons of people mimic the really evil people on Halloween, and it was just seemed as good old-fashioned fun. So that sort of morbid gallows humor I really get, and I understand how that can be upsetting to the woke people, but at the same time, I do really get how dressing up in outrageous costumes can just be good old-fashioned fun. Now, as a Muslim, I don't dress up for Halloween, and if I did, if I wasn't Muslim and I went to dress up as Halloween, the scary costumes are the coolest, in my opinion. So if someone wants to dress up like a weird old World War II soldier, it's a pretty average costume, really. It would have been more funny if they would have dressed up like the guy from Halloween, Michael Myers, or something like that. Something way more brutal. But a lot of the same people who will complain about a Nazi outfit that Harry wore dress up their kids as Jeffrey Dahmer for Halloween. You see what I'm saying? And you can get into semantics of body count in terms of who they hurt and whatnot. But what I'm getting at is the sinister nature of the individual, right? I mean, think of a werewolf and a vampire. I mean, a vampire literally, I've seen so many vampire horror movies growing up. Each one is quite brutal for what they do to their victims. So, is a vampire something okay? You know what I'm saying? When you start policing Halloween, you begin to see the slope of costume control. It's quite interesting. Now, there was another point where Prince Harry said that because he dressed up that way, he was visited by a high-profile rabbi, which got me to thinking about Kanye West, and how Kanye West says he was visited by a rabbi, and I believe Michael Jackson said the same. And I find this tactic to be popping up more, how they get visited by a rabbi, in Jordan Peterson as well, and they get coached and controlled heavily. I've never seen that with any other culture that's had a genocide done against them. I mean, if you insult the Cherokee tribe, you don't have a Cherokee person come to you and coach you about the Trail of Tears and whatever, right? The Incas. If you insult the Peruvians, there's someone from the ancient Incan tribes come and lecture you. You see what I'm saying? So, Harry also said he had to go see a Holocaust museum type of discussion, right? They were lecturing him about the Holocaust and stuff like that because he simply dressed up as a Nazi for fun, as a rebellious, fun-loving youth. And in the interview, you can see he says it was one of the worst decisions of his life. So you can see how they got him to really get on his knees and beg. And it's fascinating watching a prince beg to a certain group of people for just a dumb costume. You know, I guess I just have thicker skin. If someone dresses up and disrespects something that I love, there's a point where you're like, hey, stop it right now. But then you move on. I think drag queens dancing for kids is way worse than someone dressing up in a Nazi outfit. But everyone has their particular opinion. But then again, it's not my culture, it's not my history, so it's natural that I wouldn't have a sort of loving connection to that history. So I wouldn't be outraged when someone insults that history. But what made it woke, that episode, was mentioning slavery, Nazism, a rabbi, and race, and the Holocaust. And so you can see the very liberal aim that they're going at to try to fit in with some crowd, sort of bending the knee to the woke agenda. I found that to be unpalatable, and I can see why people have started to get irritated by the fakeness, because it's not genuine. Because I feel like someone who dresses up like that, they should just tell the truth and say, you know what, I wanted to be edgy, I was edgy and I did it, right? It's just fascinating when you watch people do apology tours for very simple things. But people are more sensitive and cancel culture is more popular, and so if he wants to leave the royal family, he's got to bend the knee to another group in order to protect him. And clearly we see which group that is. But it's quite interesting how they get into that. But the slavery point, it's like, that's just history. Italy doesn't have to apologize for the Colosseum. And so many people who get mad about the history of slavery will go and watch, plenty of documentaries about Italy. I mean, the Colosseum was pretty brutal. People fought to the death. I don't know, I guess I just look at those who were slaves all across the world and survived. They have a very epic story. Makes them remarkable in a way, because they faced a severe challenge. Now you just kind of have the feminization of men, and they wouldn't even survive as a slave. So a slave man is stronger than the freed man of today, who's more feminine and whiny and wants to become a eunuch. It's quite fascinating. And throughout history, you can just see how different nations dealt with slavery in the lower classes. I think that's why we have such strong people today, is because people had to just endure. And so I don't get as outraged over England's history, and I think this documentary was trying to really make England feel ashamed for its history. And slaves have come in all colors across Earth. So I find it kind of disturbing how they only try to make it towards people of color. It's kind of odd, because if you just go back into our history, every nation has experienced some type of genocide, violence, and whatnot, and we don't really need to play victim Olympics of who had it worse and who had it the easiest, in my opinion. But it is a bit pretentious, the series, thus far, which makes sense. I mean, it's about royals. But, I don't think it's increased my opinion about them. in either negative or positive, but rather it's just made me more aware of how the UK media is pretty brutal with their tabloid coverings. She also mentioned, well, actually, how do I phrase it? There was a couple shots about how the media said she was like a girl from Compton, or they did get very racial in terms of trying to ghettoize her, which from what it looks like is her mother isn't ghetto and neither was she. They're a very normal family. They weren't hood rats. So I found that to be kind of sad. And then she mentioned she had a stepsister or a half sister or some sister, I don't know. Can't remember which position she held, but she was a sister or something, who was giving fake quotes to the media for money. I found that to be quite sad when your own family turns on you for money. And it's also mentioned how the people, the paparazzi that is, stalked her mom. They still do. And that even her mom can't go to the grocery store without someone following her and stalking her and threatening her. And I just found it to be quite sad. I think it's about the time there'd be some type of laws. It should be completely illegal. Maybe the way to solve such paparazzi is to make it illegal and to make that type of harassment a legal offense. Maybe that'd help. But then again, you always have the drive to take pictures of someone. I remember working in a cafe, an Italian restaurant, and Robin Williams once came in, and I didn't go bother him, but I did like him as a human being, right? And Carlos Santana once came in. I once saw Reese Witherspoon. So I've seen celebrities in public before, but I just never went up and bothered them, you know? I wasn't a huge fan of them, but I never felt the compulsion to like chase them or harass them, but because I'm a sane person. But paparazzi are in it for a different reason. So thus far, the only thing I've taken away from the series is the more famous you get, the more insane the paparazzi gets, and the chances of your family being harassed and driven insane is quite high. So, wow. What do you think? Have you seen the series? What's the word on the street in the UK? Because what the UK people think about the royals is going to be different than Americans. But the different classes of Americans and different political leanings of Americans will care in a different way about the royals. But it is quite fascinating to see the differences in culture. And I don't know much about the Commonwealth, but they started to get into the Commonwealth now in that series. So maybe I will learn something about what exactly that is, how it works, how it functions, and who's part of it and whatnot. So hopefully we actually learn something besides how oppressed that couple is in their royal family. Hope you're having a good day, and if you want to join my blog, it's www.subscribestar.com/MilahanArchive. A lot of good posts on there, and you can be part of a community with less trolls. And yeah, talk to you soon.